have paradigms and roadblocks that prevent us from excelling, and they can be real or imagined. Welcome to Beyond Bricks, a podcast that will give you the ability to break through those walls. Here's Dr. Nathan Unruh.
Welcome, everyone. You're in for a treat. I always live by a simple principle that if you got to be the smartest person in the room, you better change rooms. And in this case, this is really easy for me because you are the smartest person in this room, no doubt. I'm with Dr. Craig Piso, the author of Healthy Power. And during our conversation, you know, this book is so packed with so many insights, and we're just going to brush over some of those just to whet your appetite to get you engaged and inspired to want to go read the book. But first, you know, first of all, thanks for coming and being part of this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us about you. What's your background? Where are you from?
Yeah.
How'd you get to this point?
Yeah. Well, I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and came from a blue-collar family, which is natural for Pittsburgh. And I went to college and majored in psychology, went to graduate school, got a master's and a PhD at University of Pittsburgh. My first job was in Pittsburgh working as a child and family therapist at a community mental health center. And I took 5 years of a family therapy seminar weekly with a family therapy expert to consult on complex cases. And we learned about how family relationships work, the power dynamics. And eventually I learned to be more effective helping families become more functional. I'm saying all that because if you fast forward to the 45 years now I've been working, that early experience became very relevant to the work I do organizationally, because work families are the macrocosm, if you will, of the microcosm that I worked with back in those community mental health center days. In between there, I had many decades of work as a psychologist. I got into the corporate world. I learned business. I learned management and leadership in business. And then about 20 years ago, I concluded that the best path for me to take would be to be my own boss, just to freelance. I'm a little bit of a autonomous rebel. I could never work for anybody very well. I really couldn't. That's a whole nother aside. But I never found the fulfillment in terms of being free to be me and be creative and operate on all cylinders until I launched my own business. So I've been consulting now in ophthalmology for at least 15 years. That's the mainstay of what I do. I do practice management consulting. I visit practices like Vance Thompson Vision, and I talk about the things in my wheelhouse that I've learned through these 45 years. Primarily, things like leadership effectiveness, how managers can manage better, how teams can work better in teamwork with spirit and engagement, how we can communicate and empower each other in our working relationships, and the like. So that's the short answer of my career to this point.
Oh, what a great career. And so with all that background in human behavior, both individual one-on-ones as well as working with teams, there's so many things we can learn about those dynamics. Now, as you were talking, it reminded me of a statistic. 40% of our lives are spent at work. So when you talk about our work family, if we're spending 40% of our lives, which is about 155,000 hours in a lifetime,
right,
that work family is a pretty big deal.
It's a very big deal. And it dovetails with what I think you're leading into around burnout, I suspect.
So a big subject, burnout.
Yes.
I know I've been in burnout many times myself in my own life. What are some practical things that you can advise us on about burnout?
Well, I think it's important to understand a framework that undergirds, burnout versus, thriving. And then we could get into some practical tips. I think the two, understanding the why and the principle helps support the how and the practical application. So I read this book by Dr. John Izzo, psychologist, called The 5 Secrets You Need to Discover Before You Die, and he talked about being tired at the end of your workday and having either a good or a bad tired. And he described that the people who feel good, they have a good tired at the end of the day, which is the antidote to burnout, is that they're engaged in their work. They are driven with a sense of meaning and purpose. They have a sense that they have a calling, not just a job. They're following a career path. Whereas the people who define work as drudgery, or it lacks meaning, or they're disengaged, they have a very hard time understanding that in order to get energy from work, you need to invest in work. You could think of the metaphor of priming a pump. If you're dying of thirst, but you have a well that has run dry, you need to pour buckets of water down there, get it going, create the suction, and then the well will feed the village. But you have to be willing to invest that precious water while you're dying of thirst. Well, if you're exhausted at work, people are feeling like they just don't have their get up and go, I coach them to do the opposite of what they intuitively believe they should do. They think I should just stand around and protect and preserve what little energy I have and do the minimum of work. And then by 9:30, they're looking at the clock and saying, oh my God, it's only 9:30. And the day drags, and it's exhausting. And at the end of the day, they have a bad tired. They don't feel engaged, they don't feel fulfilled, and they're certainly not joyfully energized by what they're doing. So that's the framework of good versus bad tired. What practically it means is to find a way to serve. And this is where Vance Thompson vision comes in as exemplary. This idea of having a service orientation, that we don't have water to pour down the well to prime the pump, but we have our hearts and souls. We have our minds and our energy to invest in each other as our work family members, and certainly in the patients. And when we give unconditionally, there's no strings attached. We're just giving because it's the right thing to do. We're paid to do it, but it's the right thing to do even if we weren't being paid to do it. We were working as volunteers. We would still pour our hearts lovingly, wholeheartedly into what we're doing. When you empty yourself like that, from the heart, working wholeheartedly with professional love, what comes back is joy. And in my book, I talk about energizing joy versus egocentric pleasure. Energizing joy comes from love. You invest lovingly and you see it bears good fruit. Your coworkers are thriving, your patients are recovering, and everybody's crying tears of joy because of, they can see better and they're relieved from their suffering, etc. You vicariously cry with them tears of joy. And you're tired at the end of the day, but that's a good day. That's a good tired. So the antidote to burnout starts with finding meaning and purpose, and then having that faith to commit to investing wholeheartedly in your work, making it your calling, not simply your job.
Okay, I love that. I've never heard it. That's so beautifully said. I want to pull out a few things for the listeners there. We always hear, are you happy? Right? You got to find your happy. But what I heard there, because happy, and you tell me if you agree with this, happy is more extrinsic. What I heard you just describe as joy is more intrinsic.
Absolutely. Because if I'm seeking joy and fulfillment, then it starts inside, which is under my control, good news, and I, with this leap of faith, working wholeheartedly, invest and commit to giving the best of myself, and then try it out and have it come back and feel so energized in that process that you realize that you are autonomous, that you can drive yourself, reward and derive rewards from this world accordingly. Where people get stuck is maintaining that focus on things external. Like, I need that feedback, I need your approval, or I need that extra donut in the break room so that I get some pleasure, as opposed to the joy of service, the joy of love and fulfillment. I know it sounds old-fashioned and corny, but these things they're still part of the human DNA, our structure, and they'll never be obsolete.
I agree with you 100%, but it's not always the narrative we hear. about work.
It's the road less traveled, as the famous book says. Yes.
But work there was made for us, not the other way around, right? To provide us joy. I mean, when God created Adam and Eve, or created the garden, he put Adam and Eve in the garden to do what? To work, to create joy, and to create service back to the garden. Well,
you're absolutely right in that we are built as a species to be active, and to be actively engaged in doing something productive that brings us back a sense of meaning and purpose and fulfillment. And I would add to that, that's why so many people in retirement struggle, because their vision of the good life is, I don't have to work anymore. I can sit around and languish and stagnate, and very often, tragically, they're dead within 2 years. That we are not built emotionally nor physically to be, think of our lives like a swimming pool. I have a swimming pool at home, I maintain it well, and I keep the chemicals in balance and the filter clean, and we have a pristine swimming experience. If I ignore that pool for 1 to 2 weeks, it starts getting green and slimy. Or if I don't have the chemicals in balance, our bodies are mostly water. Each of our little trillions of cells are swimming pools. When we keep our bodies in motion actively, especially with a positive outlook, we are filtering our water. We are circulating and pumping. The heart is pumping that water through our body. Our kidneys and the rest are filtering it. When we sit around and we don't move, we stagnate, and especially with negativity, what do you think happens to every cell in our body? Not only do we get fat, we get stagnant and stale. And does it not then make sense that we feel stagnant, stale, potentially depressed, burned out? So I just read a great book by Dr. Sanjay Gupta called Keep Sharp. He's a neurosurgeon, chief medical correspondent with CNN. You probably know that. I just read the book this year. And he said the number one research-based antidote to getting old and losing your mind in terms of memory, dementia, and Alzheimer's is walking. And he explains it, as I just did. Walking circulates the blood. It flushes out the waste of our brains so that we have an opportunity, day and night, with good sleep hygiene as well, but based on good activity level and physical fitness, you keep your mind sharper and you're less prone to emotional disorders, including burnout.
Okay, hold on a second. Does that mean that I should sit on my couch and surf through Instagram and Facebook?
You don't look like you have a problem with this at all.
I know.
You look like a fitness guru.
I love what you're saying because it's so simple, it's so easy, but we have to do that.
Well, we need to connect the dots. And a number of physicians have said to me that my metaphor about the pool water makes perfect sense.
I love that analogy. Yeah.
And it's research-based also, that physical activity, especially physical activity with a good attitude. Now, you could be doing physical labor, like being at the gym, but you view it negatively as, life sucks and then you die, this is drudgery, I'm a victim, oh, woe is me. And you don't get the physical benefit of doing that physical labor, but if you view that physical labor as privilege, as opportunity, or just as simple good exercise, and you don't need to go to the gym because you're moving a shovel all day, then you get the benefits of the exercise from a fitness perspective. The mind drives the body drives the mind. No surprise, they're all interconnected.
Okay, I'm going to put a pin in this one because I got to keep rolling here.
Go.
Because you got so much in your brain, and I got you for a short period of time. But here's my pin. So, I get to work. I don't have to work. Is that what I'm hearing?
I choose to work. I need to work. HAVE is the worst four-letter word you can ever speak. Because then you're a slave to your own thoughts. I have to do this, or I have no choice. That's a lie. You're lying. You choose everything you do every moment. So I tell people, be careful what you say. Your brain is listening. Don't say I have to, because you don't have to. You choose to. Why do you choose to? Because you need to. But when you say I need to, thus I make the choice, now I'm president and CEO of my life. as opposed to I have to because they're making me do it. My boss, the bill collector, the traffic cop, they're making me do it. Nobody makes you do a damn thing, okay?
I love
But
it.
it's not a word game.
Yeah.
It's an actual mindset that drives attitude and mood, which is if I'm here because I choose to be, and I could choose to do otherwise, well, I'm also mindful about consequences I bring to myself if I make bad choices. But even then, I could choose poorly and invite that bad consequence. And then I'm wholly free. But you're never free if you say, well, I had no choice. I have to do this. They made me do it. My boss is, that's a lie. And anything we believe that's based on lies disempowers us. And anything that disempowers us contributes to our burnout. It all comes back to your original question. What burns us out? How we think is a big part of it.
Well, I promise you this, I'll never think about burnout differently. The same way ever again. I mean, the metaphor of the pool is brilliant. Yeah. So in your book, a concept, and if you haven't read Dr. Peisel's book, Healthy Power, I highly encourage you pick a copy of it. It's just full of just what you just got done hearing right there. But we're going to give you some more right now. But love plus structure, I think it's in chapter 4.
Yeah.
I thought that was just a brilliant concept. Talk to us about love plus structure.
Well, a couple
love and structure.
Yeah, a couple facets to that. It might sound like a cliche, but people say a dream might be inspiring, but a dream without a goal or a plan remains only a dream. So you can think of having a goal and making a plan as adding structure to your passion, your love. So we need both. And I used the comparison with another conversation I had this past year with somebody at Vance Thompson Vision. I said, you might have a passionate drive, a love of travel, and you want to go coast to coast and travel Route 66. But you better have your car in shape, and you better follow the speed limit laws and stay within the lines. Because if you ignore your gas gauge and run out of gas, that interrupts the flow. So passion without structure, the structure of knowing there are highway limits and boundaries and rules and consequences. There are limits and boundaries for the car itself if it gets overheated or is not fully fueled. Rumble strips is a good example. Why do we have rumble strips? Don't they disturb you when you drift out of your lane? And don't we need that wake-up call because we're drifting out of our... That's a form of structure that keeps us in lane, so that we literally can fulfill the passion of driving coast to coast. There's nothing to stop you from going to fulfill that dream. I'm using that example, driving 3,000 miles, as long as you abide by the structure. Love without the structure can get you into a potential disaster, or at least a dead end, and short-circuit your goal attainment. So we need both. Another parallel I think about is, the yoke. Do you ever see the old-fashioned wooden yoke that oxen would wear, or horse-drawn carriages? They would wear a yoke and pull a plow or a wagon, something like that, on the old farms. Well, if I was one of those animals, I might say, if I had a human mind, I don't want this yoke, I don't need this structure, and I don't like working next to you. Okay? But the farmer would say, if he's listening and read my book, the farmer would say, but listen, when you work together, 1 + 1 = 3 or more, because there's synergy of you working together side by side. You're now a team. Teamwork is better than working in isolation, and it keeps you going in the right direction. We'll be more efficient and productive if you just put on your yoke and accept that it's not punishment, it's not torture, it's structure that enables you to fulfill your own dream of being successful, assuming they have them. And the parallel, obviously, is for us going to work and adopting a similar attitude that, Vance Thompson Vision is a case in point. Every employer has a yoke they expect employees to put on. Come to work, wear the yoke. What does it mean? Follow the policies and procedures, color inside the lines, obey the rules, etc. And the attitude about the yoke drives so much of the degree to which they're either engaged or holding back, fulfilled or unfulfilled, thriving or burned out. Again, it's attitude and perspective.
Brilliantly said. So this goes into my next question, and I love the yoke metaphor. So when you're looking at dynamics of teams and leadership,
Yeah.
you talk to me about the ripple effect. Speak to that.
Yeah. Well, in the book, I talk fundamentally about two types of power. The book title is Healthy Power, Pathways to Success in Work, Love, and Life as a subtitle. But the structure of the book is really the contrast of healthy versus unhealthy power in 8 main domains, 8 forks in the road where we make choices. We make choices on the one side that increase our level of power in that domain in healthy ways. Or in that same domain, we go down the other side of the fork and we make other choices and we become more powerful, but in ways that are unhealthy. Okay, so I could give examples, but rather than belabor that here, say the ripple effect is, first of all, we all make a ripple effect. It's like a reputation. You might say, well, you don't have one. Everybody has a reputation, whether you know it or not. And we all make a ripple effect in our workplace, just by whether or not we show up, whether or not we show up on time, how we show up, what's the look on our face, how are we dressed, what do we say or fail to say. We're all rippling. And those with the most power, the primary leaders of any organization, you could think of as the boulders who dropped in the center of a pond, make the deepest, most far-reaching ripple effect on everyone else. So sometimes people make the mistake, they have the mistaken idea that, well, I'm not in charge here, so what difference do I make? Everybody makes a huge impact in their corner of the pool. You could think of it, to use an example from my past, I had a pool party when my stepdaughters were very young, so this is over 20 years ago. I had worked all summer to make the pool pristine, as I've talked about earlier. And that was after struggling all summer to get it balanced. I actually drained the pool, bought a new filter, rebooted, and got it ready just in time for the late summer party. And during the party, I'm in the pool supervising the young children and my stepdaughters who were like 5 years old. And one of the mothers brought over their infant child and thought it would be really cool to expose them to the pool, which is nice, and dunked the baby in the pool. But did you ever see a tea bag dipped in steeping hot water and oozes brown? Imagine what was happening outside that diaper into my pristine pool.
Oh, you were so bad.
Now, here's how crazy the idea was. I was on one side of the pool and it happened on the opposite 20 feet away from me, and I thought, oh, I'll be okay over here. And then it dawned on me, the water's circulating. Within seconds, I'm going to be immersed in sewage. I said, everybody out of this pool. Now, I'm telling you that story not just to entertain, but because it's an analogy or a metaphor for what we do in the workplace. Are we filtering water? Are we making it clear and beautiful and pristine for our coworkers? Are we impacting them in ways that make it inviting and pleasant and beautiful? Or are we dunking our dirty diaper in their workplace and contaminating it? Really, not to be graphic about it, but that's what it amounts to.
It's a great metaphor.
The point is, nobody gets to be Switzerland. Nobody's neutral. Yeah. Nobody shows up and isn't either demonstrating healthy power that has a positive, helpful ripple effect, or they're demonstrating power that's less than healthy, and it's toxic, it's negative, and its ripple effect is damaging and destructive.
And who wants to swim in that pool?
Not me.
Yeah.
You tend to have the healthiest people, who are also your most marketable, jump out of the pool first because they can. If you're more marketable because you're more valuable, you have more options to say, not me, this place stinks, I'm out of here. So in terms of talent acquisition and retention, you need to have a pristine pool to keep the most valuable high talent people swimming and growing in your team effort, in your work family.
Awesome stuff. So let me transition to another question here. And I just want to talk about, you're an amazing communicator. You've given us already in a short period of time these wonderful parables, metaphors, analogies, whatever we want to call them. How do you become better at communicating? How do I become a better communicator?
Well, I think it starts with defining what we mean by communication, okay? And most people think of it as, what can I say? Can I be a better speaker? Can I share better information? I think that's the second part and the lesser part, frankly, of being a great communicator. The first part is knowing how to ask really great questions and really being a great listener. And I mean, to be a great listener means you're present. You're making eye contact. You're really here. You're not like, quietly listening, but not really listening, thinking, well, this is what I'm going to say next when he stops talking, whatever he's saying. No, that's what commonly happens. They role play listening and they're not. To be a great listener means I've asked you a question and I'm genuinely interested in what you think or feel. And I'm going to really be quiet and engaged and present because I'm genuinely interested in hearing what's going to come out of your mouth next. That involves a form of empathy. That is the ability to put ourselves in the other person's place, to be able to understand how they're thinking, why they think that way, how they feel, perhaps even why they feel that way. And that exchange of information, well, information is power unless it's disempowering. That's a whole other topic. But let's assume that you're giving me truth, fact-based information, or at least your best honest opinion. Now I'm empowered. Information like that empowers me with understanding, oh, that's the lens through which you see it. I might disagree with you. I might think it's unhealthy or dangerous or just wrong. I might think it's crazy. But I'm not going to say that's wrong and crazy. I'm going to say, with genuine appreciation and respect, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for opening up and telling me that. Now that I understand that, I can meet you where you are. We call it pacing. I can pace with you there. I can show respect, not necessarily agreement with your point of view. And the beauty of it is to become an influential communicator, you pivot from pacing to leading. And it's in that order. If I pace with you, I've also done what's called active listening. And I'll say something like, I heard you say X. And I'll let you know without parroting you or sounding gimmicky that I get it. I heard you, I understand, and now you know that I was listening and you know I really understand, I get it. I've given you a gift. I've listened, I've cared, I've been interested, and I understand. I gave you the gift. And now I'll say something like, however, or but, or and I'll make a transitional comment where I'll say, perhaps we could think about this a different way. Have you ever considered X? Or let me share with you a story about, or how other people have handled this and it served them well. I'm inviting them to take my lead, to move from where we met first, where I paced with them, where we started, to leading them to entertain new options, consider perhaps a dramatic pivot of their own. And when they accept that, when they buy it, so to speak, then I've influenced them to change. And that's the essence of coaching. It's the essence of good therapy. It's the essence of great communication.
So you've had thousands of one-on-one conversations.
Yeah, bazillion.
A bazillion.
Yeah, that's the technical word.
And you've been able to practice that just through pure repetition.
Yeah, I have the 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell talks about in Outliers.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
How do we get better at that? Because I don't want
Put
to
in
become
10,000
a therapist. I see a therapist. I don't want to become one. So how do we get better at that?
Well,
Because isn't that one of the biggest complaints in the workplace and even our personal relationships, that you're not listening. You never listen. You don't communicate. So when people say you don't communicate, what they're really saying a lot of times, you're not listening.
yeah.
Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. I think most people, like I said earlier, when they think about being a great communicator, they think about being a good orator or knowledgeable, and they can disseminate or lecture great information. It's almost not on the radar to say, first, I'm a great communicator because I know how to ask questions, probe, invite, elicit, listen, understand, empathize, and give feedback that connects us. See, I think great communication is about great relationship building.
Okay, do that what you just did there.
What did I just do?
You gave us 3 like little steps. So you listen, actively listen.
You ask great questions.
You ask great questions.
Born out of genuine interest.
Then you empathize.
You listen, you empathize until you understand, and then you acknowledge or confirm somehow that you understand. That's pacing.
Got it.
And that makes the first connection.
Got it.
That puts us in a position to then potentially lead, and that is influence others to change. It's ironic, you know, I work in ophthalmology where there's so many of the cataract surgeons, of course, are always doing lens replacements. I think I'm in the business of psychological lens replacement. I help people see things, because our perception defines our reality. The way we see it is real to us. But if I can help you change your perspective, if I can help you see it, perceive it differently, since your perception is your reality and your perception has changed, your reality has changed. You know, if I say, oh my God, look at this dreary sky. It's nothing but dark clouds. It's so dreary today. I was on a walk the other day with my wife, walking the dog, and I was role-playing this with her, and I said, you know, look at all these dark clouds. It's supposed to be spring and it's snowing here, you know? And I said, but look at that cloud right there. There's a silver lining. You can't see it, but that silver lining says what? There's a brilliant ball of golden sunshine waiting to come out. So what am I focused on? Am I focused on the dark cloud and feeling dreary? Or am I shifting my focus toward the positive, the hopefulness of, this too shall pass and the sun will shine again? What we focus on tends to expand. So be selective about what you focus on. Because you focus on the negative, it too will expand. Focus on the positive. You change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Change your perspective. So I think great communicators are great relationship builders and understand this basic premise that information should be empowering. That all truly great relationships are mutually empowering in how we communicate back and forth.
So focus on what you focus on will expand.
Yep.
Great communication is really about relationship building.
It's the primary avenue we have, especially in the workplace, to empower each other and thus build relationships. That's why leadership in the workplace, it really behooves top leaders to become super communicators, to build great relationships that generate team loyalty and productivity and engagement.
And to do this, we got to focus on it to expand the skill set. And to do this, we have to build consistency in our awareness of this tool. And you told me this story the other day when I talked to you about consistency. And I've heard about Icarus and read about Icarus, but the way you told me this story of Icarus was brilliant. So I want you to tell that story to the listeners.
Sure. I mean, I'm a big fan of ancient mythology, Greek and Roman mythology. It speaks to the unconscious mind and how it evolved thousands of years ago as legend and fable and myth. But it informs us even today about so many things. So I was reading fairly recently Joseph Campbell's book, The Power of Myth, and he talked about the story there, and I've been using it in some of my coaching work. And the story is that this king in Greece, Minos, I think his name was, had Daedalus build this maze. And it was so intricate, the labyrinth was so intricate that virtually no one could ever escape. So the king captured a neighboring king with whom they had had a war and held him prisoner in the labyrinth. That was his life sentence. He would live out his days in the labyrinth. But he escaped. And the king Minos assumed the only one who could have helped him find his way out was the builder of the labyrinth, Daedalus. Well, Daedalus then was imprisoned along with his son who helped him build it. Daedalus the father, Icarus the son. And they were imprisoned by King Minos in this tall tower for potentially for life. But Daedalus, being the craftsman he was, fashioned these wings out of bird feathers and wax and twine and things that they were able to pull together. And he instructed his son, just before they were to escape by flying out the tower window, he said, look, if you fly too close to the water and the humidity will weight the wings down and you'll crash. If you go too close to the sun, the hot air will melt the wax and you'll crash into the sea. He goes, follow my lead. I'm going to go in the middle, not too high, not too low. So they took off together, and they were doing fine until Icarus had this ambition. The idea that he could be like Jupiter, the king of all the gods, by flying up toward the heavenly places. And depending on the legend you read, one of the gods, perhaps Jupiter himself, punished him by melting the wax, but otherwise it just happened. He ignored the council, he ignored the structure, the rumble strips were there, but he ignored them, and the wings came off and he crashed to the sea and drowned. And the lesson for that, it's not primarily about, be a good teenager and don't rebel against parental authority. That's not what we're saying, because to some degree that's healthy. What we're saying is, in life, there are opportunities to go high and low, but the middle way is where you find balance and strength. And especially from an emotional intelligence standpoint, when you start to recognize when you get too excited, too high, or too low, you need to do the work of getting back in your zone.
It's brilliant. You are so delightful and brilliant to sit here and have a conversation.
Is my wife going to watch this?
We'll make sure she watches it. I want you to, as we close this conversation, and I look forward to our next conversation. And again, for the listeners right now, I highly recommend pick up his book, Healthy Power, Dr. Craig Piso, and it's just full of just information that you've been listening to. And we're going to talk more in the future, and I look forward to that. But you and I got to meet through an organization I love, because I've been able to look at this organization and see what they do just to care for their people, care for their patients, and that organization's Vance Thompson Vision.
Yeah.
And talk about the magic of Vance Thompson Vision.
Yeah, that's such a great question. Vance Thompson Vision is my favorite, largest customer. I'm wholly engaged with them. And I've been involved since 2019, so it's been 4 or 5 years now. I learned then, and it persists consistently to today, that there are two cornerstones of that organization. Dr. Vance Thompson himself, of course, the founder, and Dr. John Berdahl. Now, that's not to minimize the role of the people they've brought in. So many great fellow surgeons and business executives and administrators, but those pillars represent a kind of yin and yang. By that I mean, and it's sort of an ancient model, that if you think of the Fu dogs, for example, who are the guardians of the ancient Chinese palaces, one represents the yang. The yang is the dog, it's a dragon dog kind of figure that has its paw holding a ball. And that ball represents the world. It's dominion and control over the world. It's counterbalanced on the other side of the steps going into the palace with the other one that is the female representative, representing yin. And it's got its paw on a little puppy lying on its back. And she's holding it, she's nurturing it, she's disciplining it, but all things related to its well-being, growth, and development. And that's her world, the gender stereotypes. Well, in essence, I think that's the magic of Vance Thompson Vision, because Dr. Thompson is more of that yin figure. He is loving and caring and nurturing, protective, very interested in conditions of the heart, love and joy, spirit, etc. Dr. Berdahl brings those features as well, but he counterbalances Dr. Thompson with this sense of, we're going to be powerful, we're going to be successful, we're going to drive this thing, we're going to be research-based, data-driven, and best in the world. And they're doing it. But I don't think either one of them alone has everything it takes to create the same degree of magic that they have in this magical synergy where 1 + 1 is 3 or more. The other side of it, to answer your question fairly briefly, is they bring what I call the leadership dyad otherwise. That is, in any healthcare organization, you need a melding of medical and business leadership. Somebody's going to be driving all things medical surgical. That's their wheelhouse and their set of priorities. And if they controlled the budget, it would all go toward making the life of the doctors and surgeons better. But they might fail as a business because they're not trained in business. And similarly, the other side of the house, that's business, administrative, financial, and the like, if you let them drive it, you might have a great business for a while, except that if it's not medically informed and in keeping in step with best medical practice and the like, you would eventually become stale and potentially go out of business. So they need each other, like mom and dad in a family, separate but equal, different but equal in terms of importance. That leadership dyad is what they have. They respect each other, they trust each other, they collaborate with each other, and they make all major decisions mindful of we're a medical surgical practice and we need to have a platform and a structure that's operationally productive and profitable. In other words, we need to consider both sides of the house as separate, equally important, balanced, and being mindful. And that's why, as surgeons, they've continued to be even more successful by bringing in expertise that neither one of them really has. Subject matter experts, business and financial, operational, that augment their leadership vision and values.
No wonder they're so magical.
They are magical. And they're my favorite practice for those reasons. You walk into their swimming pool, so that you immerse yourself in that culture, you know it's pristine. Not perfect, there is no perfect, but it is the best I've ever experienced.
That swimming pool metaphor is the greatest. All I can see is that dirty diaper.
Well, it's indelibly etched in my mind.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great conversation with Dr. Piso. Am I saying your name right?
This time you did.
The last time, because I just caught myself just now.
Yeah, but you caught it. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, a lot of great things here that we talked about today on burnout. We talked about love plus structure. What the ripple effect is. Are you a positive ripple or a negative ripple? Because you're going to have a ripple effect one or the other, right? The dirty diaper.
There's no other choice.
And then just how to become a better communicator. Start with listening and being empathetic. And then making sure that, think about that Icarus metaphor. Just don't fly too close to the sun and don't fly too close to the water. Be consistent. And I just appreciate what you said about Vance Thompson Vision in their organization. And in all organizations, we need to strive to be more like that, both individually and collectively. So again, thanks for your time.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Have paradigms and roadblocks that prevent us from excelling, and they can be real or imagined. Welcome to Beyond Bricks, a podcast that will give you the ability to break through those walls. Here's Dr. Nathan Unruh.